Hey guys, this video is going to go on our Myths About Japan playlist, and it's going to be a little mini series that's going to be very unpopular with some people. As lots of you guys know, we always try to show you everything we see in Japan, so we don't stop and think whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, or whether it's going to be popular on YouTube or unpopular on YouTube, or whether we'll lose subscribers or get subscribers. We don't think about it. If we see something that we think might be interesting to some people, we show you. That's just the way it works. And quite often there are consequences from that. Quite often people do get upset, they don't like it because we've showed something that makes Japan look bad, or something that makes people feel bad. Some people want to think that everything about Japan is positive. They have a sort of an image in their mind of Japan being sort of like some sort of perfect place. And if we make a video that shows that it's not, those videos are usually very unpopular with some people, and they'll get upset. They'll unsubscribe, or they'll leave nasty comments, or they'll thumb down the video, or all three. So that happens quite a bit. But the way we see it is that the channel's supposed to be about Japan, and that should be all aspects of Japan. Whatever we see that's going to be mildly interesting to somebody, that's what we're going to show you. So, on the Myths playlist, for the Myths playlist, the reason we're putting it on there is quite often we'll hear comments from people either on our channel or just elsewhere on the internet, or just in general, comments from people saying that everyone in Japan is really polite. Everyone in Japan is really kind and really polite. And we understand where that comes from, because if you spend some time in Japan, you find that just about everybody you encounter in Japan is polite and kind. But, you know, people that come here perhaps they're lucky, they come here for a short period of time. There's a few things. If you come here for a short period of time, it's quite possible, because, of course, every country has a-holes, right? Every country has people that aren't very nice, that are selfish, that behave badly. Every country, of course. You know, any group of people in the world is going to have a certain percentage of a-holes, right? We all know that. Whereas, perhaps in Japan, the a-holes here are usually lower profile. So in some countries, they're really in your face, and you're running into them all day long. You know, all sorts of people that are rude and aggressive and selfish and badly behaved. And in a lot of countries, they're really high profile. Whereas in Japan, you tend to not notice them as much most of the time. Now and again, you will really get one in your face, and that's what this little mini series is about, a-holes in Japan, because they do exist, and you do come across them. If you spend enough time here, you will come across them. There's a couple of other reasons why people don't notice them when they come here for a short period of time. There is a cultural thing, and quite often the a-holes in Japan are really subtle about their bad behavior. And if you're not used to Japanese culture, and you don't really know what's happening, or your Japanese isn't very good, it's easy to miss it, which is good. I mean, if there are a-holes around you and you don't notice, that's a good thing, right? So that is a good thing, but it does mean that sometimes people come here and spend some time here and then go away saying, oh, everyone in Japan is kind, everybody in Japan is polite and very nice. And of course that's wonderful. And I mean, obviously it definitely is nice. You know, you're living here most of the time, and most of the time you don't notice badly behaved people, and you don't hear them, and they're not in your face, and it is one of the main reasons why this is a really nice place to live, is the behavior of the majority of the people. And you know, you sit in a restaurant, you won't hear raised voices of people being aggressive at each other, or, you know, we drive in the traffic. We spend hours driving in the traffic every week, and very rare to come across bad behavior in the traffic or aggressive behavior, but it does exist. And this is what's triggering these videos, is that we do see it, we do come across it, and we think it's important to show you what we come across. So connected to this too, of course, is that a lot of people say, oh, there's no crime in Japan. You know, there's no crime in Japan. And of course there is crime in Japan. Again, in any group of people, there are going to be some people who are going to commit crime. So of course there is crime in Japan, but the truth is that the statistics show that the crime in Japan is really, really low. the rates of crime in Japan are really, really low compared to most countries in the world. Under Japan for crime, serious crime, or any crime, are countries like Greenland and Iceland and places like that. So it is pretty amazing for a country with 127 million people that crime rates be so low. Is pretty impressive. But again, it's a myth to say there's no crime in Japan. It's not true. So with that in mind, we actually have an example, our first example of an a-hole in Japan. And it's an a-hole but also a criminal at the same time. And what this one is as you guys probably know, when you are using the internet in your country, advertisements will often pop up. Unless you're using an ad blocker or something, advertisements will often pop up. And of course they're usually related to where you're living. So if you're in the US, you're likely to get US ones. If you're in Germany, you're likely to get German ones. And of course in Japan, when we get ads pop up, usually they're in Japanese and they're for Japanese companies and things. And usually legitimate. However, occasionally we do get scamming, thieving ones. And there's one in particular that's very clever. The guys that have designed it, obviously white collar crime in Japan is quite popular because of course it's a high-tech sort of country where you get a whole lot of tech savvy people, including the criminals. So white collar crime is actually a big thing in Japan, and along with that comes the scamming and spamming and scheming that goes along with the internet. And there's this one in particular that pops up, and it's a really clever piece of scamming, and we'll show you in a second. This is just a setup to explain it to you, but it'll pop up sometimes if we use a video streaming site or something like that, and we click on a video to watch a video. Sometimes it'll this ad will pop up, and it pops up in a new window, and it is really hard to get rid of. You can't close it in the normal way. You can't just click on the corner and close it, or just close it using your browser like you normally do. You actually have to go back into behind your interface and close it using the, Alt and Escape and whatever together, pop up and close it that way. So it's a very hard little scamming piece of nonsense to get rid of. And as you're going to see, it's pretending to be from Microsoft and telling you that you've got a problem with your Microsoft and you need to phone the tech straight away so they can sort it out for you and all this sort of thing. So anyway, have a look at it. Here it is now.
Microsoft Security Alarm エラーナンバー DW6VD36 あなたの PC は第2バンクトロイアンに感染しています。このウイルスはクレジットカード情報、Facebook のパスワード、その他の個人情報をリモート IP アドレスを通してハッカーに送信します。フリーダイヤルで当社に今すぐお電話ください。我々のマイクロソフトサポートエンジニアがお電話でウイルスの削除方法をお教えします。お電話される前にこのページを閉じた場合、我々は当社のネットワークがさらにダメージを受けないようパソコンを無効にし、サイバーセキュリティにレポートします。マイクロソフトセキュリティアラーム
So as you can see, it's a pretty clever, deceiving little bit of scamming and an example of an a-hole in Japan, isn't it? Because it's obviously some Japanese scheming guy who's developed this little piece of nonsense with the goal of being obviously to scam people, to get people's information and to try and scam them out of some money in some way or another. So yeah, look, we know this is going to be unpopular. We know there's going to be some people who really don't like these videos. We get it every time, but we also have a core of supporters who do watch our videos and have been watching our videos for a long time, and we know from previous experience that even though videos like this one cost us subscribers, and we lose subscribers every time we make a video like this, and you know, anytime you say anything about Japan not being perfect, a certain number of people get upset, particularly Japanese people, by the way, as we've talked about before with TV shows like Cool Japan and things like that. You know, Japanese people prefer to that we only put a positive spin. They love the videos we make saying how great Japan is, and they're the ones that Cool Japan and the other TV programs in Japan often use our videos to show, oh, look how impressed the foreigners are with Japan. And yet we've actually spoken, Cool Japan, NHK have contacted us a few times about different things, and at one stage Cool Japan wanted me to go to Tokyo and actually be on the show and be a guest. And I said I would, as long as we spoke about discrimination against foreigners in Japan as well. And knowing full well there was no way they were going to do that, but it was just a bit of a game, bit of a making a point. Making a point that it's wonderful that they show all the good stuff about Japan, and that's all good. But to only talk about the good stuff and to never talk about the other stuff it's just not true, is it? It's not honest. It's not accurate. It's really not. In their case, it's probably fair enough because their show is called Cool Japan, and that's their whole thing. That's their whole spin. It was originally a government program, Cool Japan. The Cool Japan program was actually a government idea, a government initiative designed to promote Japan to the world. So that's fair enough. They just want to say positive stuff. But across the board in Japan, the media, TV, newspapers, magazines, across the board in Japan are always put positive spins on everything, and usually only want to report positive stuff, as we've talked about before. And a lot of people on YouTube are the same as well, because those people that are focused on making popular videos and having lots of subscribers and lots of views and that sorts of things, they know that you get much more showing great stuff about Japan. And particularly when you're in Japan making videos, because of course our videos get exposed to the Japanese viewers, which means that a high percentage actually of our videos are viewed by people actually in Japan, including Japanese people. And of course they won't like this video, and they don't want to watch videos where we talk about the other stuff about Japan. Not everybody. There are some Japanese people who say, oh, it's good that you look at everything. Of course there are. There's but generally they're not popular. So and of course that's the case on YouTube, isn't it? If you look at the front page of YouTube, it's generally things that popular videos. They're popular because they're the things that people like to hear, the things that people feel good about. Sometimes they're activist videos, but even then they're popular, aren't they? If you make a video talking about how bad it is to kill dolphins, then that's going to be a more popular video than reporting on the fact that those Western videos about killing dolphins don't stop the killing of the dolphins. That's not a popular thing to say on YouTube. So, but again, our videos are just observations. We don't get our information from Wikipedia, or we don't get it from other sources. We get our information from observation. So with that in mind, sometimes it's going to be observations that people are going to be happy with, and sometimes it's going to be observations people are not happy with. But they're observations, and if you spend time in Japan, this is what you'll see. You can't walk around Japan with your eyes closed. I mean, you can, but you're going to come across stuff. If you spend enough time in Japan, you will come across a-holes. They do exist, and we haven't talked about them terribly much unless they're relevant to other videos, but we come across them, aggressive people in the traffic, and aggressive people that you just talk to in general. And I mean, we'll show you. This is the idea of this little mini-series, is to over time, now and again, when we get examples of the bad behaviour, is to show you some of it. At least our thinking with this is that if people come to Japan having only heard all the wonderful stuff, and like we've got over 3,000 videos, and most of them are about the wonderful stuff, aren't they? So there's only a small percentage of our videos that aren't about the wonderful stuff. But anybody that comes here, particularly long term, if you come here for a holiday, it doesn't really matter probably, but the people that probably does make a big difference to are those that are intending to come here for a long time. And we get comments like that. We get comments from people on videos often who say, particularly about the relationship stuff and some of the more difficult relationship stuff. People leave a comment and say, I was really thinking about moving to Japan, but you're starting to make me realise that I wouldn't like it, because I couldn't handle living in a place where I couldn't express my true feelings, or where other people didn't express their true feelings, or something like that. And when we get those comments, Even though some Japanese people wouldn't like to see that comment, and the people who make Cool Japan TV show wouldn't like to see that comment, in one way, we're happy to see that comment because it means that there's one person there that knows the real story, and that isn't going to spend, uproot themselves from where they live and spend thousands of dollars to come and live in Japan and then get here and then find they don't like it. And that happens. I mean, the truth is, the majority of people who come to Japan long term don't stay long term. The majority, it's a huge percentage. It's something like 60 or 70% of people that come here intending to stay for the length of a visa will leave well before the visa expires, because they find it's harder than they thought it would be, and so they leave, and they leave being a bit disappointed because it wasn't as good as they thought. So with that in mind, and if you came here thinking that everyone here is polite and everybody here is kind, and it is a bit of a shock, that is one thing. When you live in a country where there's lots of aggressive, rude people, it's sort of not a surprise when it happens, whereas in Japan it can be a real shock. You can cruise along day after day after day and not come across a rude or aggressive person, and then just suddenly one day you'll have one in your face, really sudden, boof, some aggressive person in the traffic, or some other example of someone being rude and aggressive, and it can be a real shock, because we do get out of touch with that bad behaviour, fortunately, wonderfully. So when it does happen, sometimes it can be a real surprise. Whoa, geez, where'd that come from? So, again, if you've heard about this already, and this is what we think with a lot of these sort of, negative, we don't think of these things as negative or positive, but some of these more difficult topics, if we've talked about them before and you guys have thought about them, you've seen our video and you've thought about them before, then when it does happen, it's not such a shock, because you know that it exists, and you go, oh yeah, right, that video talked about this, and quite often with these videos too, there'll be people who watch them who live in Japan or have spent time here before, and they'll throw in their story. That often happens too. People say, oh yeah, I was in Tokyo and this happened, or I was in Osaka and this happened, I was out in the countryside of Japan and this happened. So not only do you get the information from our videos, but you also get quite often really interesting information in the comment section from other people who've had experiences that are similar to that here. And that's the other thing, is our videos give people a forum to talk about those things, because quite often, on YouTube you won't come across these topics. Pretty likely if you search a-holes in Japan, you're probably not going to find a lot of videos like that on YouTube, because they're not popular. People don't like talking about stuff like that. And this won't be popular either. Let's have a look how many thumbs down we've got on this video already. Which doesn't bother us, by the way. The way we figure it, the thumbs down and the losing subscribers and that sort of thing, it's not what we're about. We passed the 100,000 subscriber mark recently, and some people congratulated us, and that's nice, and it is nice, and we do appreciate the people who watch our videos, but that's not our motivation. We're not motivated by that. And to compromise what we do, to have to think about before we make a video, to have to think, oh, is this going to be popular? That's going to really affect the quality of the honesty of our videos, isn't it? If we have to consider first if it's going to be popular, is this going to get a lot of views? I mean, some of our favourite videos that we love only get a couple of hundred views. Other videos that we just sort of don't even think about terribly much might get a few thousand. But we don't really care. It's more about wanting to be sort of thorough in we see something, oh yeah, that's sort of interesting, and we make a video about it. And some of our favourite ones that we've put a lot of work into, that following that old abandoned rail line in Japan, that some of you might have watched, not many by the way. It wasn't a real popular series of videos, but that was one of the hardest series of videos we've ever had to make, because it was really hard work, in really tough weather and in really rough conditions, and lots of hours of driving and lots of hours of walking, and that was a really hard series of videos to make, that was. And it cost money, and it cost time, and it cost a lot of blood, sweat and tears. It really did. That was a hard set of videos, and loved making them. And they weren't that popular. We sort of knew they wouldn't be that popular, because they're a bit long and a bit they have to be the ones that people will be interested in, So So this is just the reason this is a bit of a rant video. This one is it's just really trying to explain why. It's trying to explain why, because if we just suddenly put on videos about a-holes in Japan, you know, it's some people aren't going to understand why we're doing it, but this is the explanation why. It's just to give the whole picture. You know, we see it, we report on it. That's the way we do it. We don't care about the views or the popularity or the anything else. Who's going to like it? Who's not going to like it? We see it. We think it's interesting. We put it up. You know, and we know there's as long as someone appreciates it, and there's always someone. Pretty much any video we make, there's always someone who goes, "Oh, I enjoyed that," and that's great. That's the sort of comment that makes it worthwhile, right? Someone enjoyed it; it was worth making. You know, or geez, that information's useful. I'm glad I know that. Brilliant. Okay, well that made it worth making. So anyway, that's more than enough on that topic. So there will be more videos about a-holes in Japan as we spot them. Then it's not going to be tomorrow because we don't see them that often. And we don't always have a camera in hand when we come across them either. There was a crazy one recently. One guy just must have lost it. He must have really been off his head, and like emotionally must have lost it. And he was just cutting people off in the traffic backwards and forwards, but like to the point where trucks and cars were actually moving aside so he didn't collide with them. It was the most amazing, aggressive piece of driving we've ever seen in Japan. It was amazing and really full on through the traffic, you know. And of course there was no time to get the camera out, and he disappeared off somewhere and he was gone, you know. But that'd be the sort of thing, if we get a chance to show you stuff like that, we will, and other stuff as well. So anyway, there it was. More videos coming soon.